Welcome to the Property Investment Podcast. Now, critical to achieving investment value successfully out of a site is what you can and cannot do on that specific site. Today, I speak with Tom Goode of Ethos Urban, who are one of Australia's premier planning agencies. Ethos Urban have been responsible for iconic projects such as Barangaroo in Sydney's CBD. Today, Tom and I talk through the Australian federal budget and the $14 billion of infrastructure spend recently announced, together with the 10,000 additional new people that will be eligible for the first homeowner grant. What will this do to the Australian property market? We answer those questions and much, much more. I hope you enjoy. The Property Investment Podcast is brought to you by Goose Capital. Goose Capital has, in conjunction with MP Funds Management, provided funding for over $1.3 billion of investment-grade real estate transactions and provided an investment return of 22% across the board, with the lowest being 9% and the highest being 42%. For more, go to www.goosecapitl.com. This episode is brought to you by the new Ethos Urban Policy Monitor app, Ethos Insight. Ethos Insight provides personalised and real-time updates on development applications, approvals and legislation in your chosen areas of interest. Plans and policy across New South Wales are undergoing great change, with every council delivering new guides for the long-term growth of the local government area. The New South Wales Planning Minister has committed to fast-track the planning pipeline, which will include new planned precincts and new rezonings. Stay up to date with the Ethos Insight app via Ethos Urban. The ability to unlock commercial value in land is governed by the legislation and planning guidelines set out by the state and local governments. Tom, Ethos Urban is one of Australia's premier real estate planning businesses, and you specialise in what can't be done and what can be done in terms of land and development use in various areas relative to new development. Mm-hmm. Can you give a bit of an overview as to what the business does and the areas of value?
That's right. Thanks for having us. Ethos Urban is East Coast based planning, design, property economics, social planning. So any of those, I suppose, activities that are around planning approvals or development approvals, and advising on best use, highest and best use of land as well. So anything to do with taking land through from rezoning through to gaining approvals and beyond is in our hitting range.
And what are some of the key projects that you've worked on?
Right. Look, we work across a range of government as well as private. Predominantly, we're a privately based firm, so we did all of the approvals for land lease at Barangaroo, and we range from those large scale type projects. Predominantly is our core focus, but through to delivery of, as I was saying, from across a number of asset classes as well.
Very good. And so the recent budget, the federal budget, has announced a $14 billion contribution towards infrastructure. What are you seeing as some of the outcomes of COVID from a value perspective?
Right. Yeah. Look, I think following the infrastructure, follow the tunnel boring machines has always been a fairly good, I think, driver for property. Government has to derive a bit of value out of its infrastructure spend. So really, that's been around for a little while. I think New South Wales is doing very well in terms of its infrastructure spend and stimulating that economy. So I don't think that'll go away anytime soon with COVID. The effects of COVID it's still hard to tell. In terms of that aspect of following the infrastructure. I mean, there's going to be less people on those trains as soon as they start running with COVID as well. But certainly, going where infrastructure is, and it doesn't have to be just transport infrastructure. I think any hard infrastructure, so Badgerys Creek and those areas as well, will drive value, as well as soft infrastructure and amenity as well. Parks, open spaces as well.
And so, aside from Badgerys Creek, what are some of the key areas of infrastructure which you think are going to have the most economic prosperity drivers to the plan?
Look, I think the Metro program is a big one, and particularly around New South Wales had the leading train system in the 1950s and earlier, but it was a real hub and spoke type system. So everything came in and out of the CBD. Metro is looking at having I suppose an orbital type system and connect some of these regional centres, well not regional, but sort of non-CBD centres, and having, I suppose, a bit of a decentralisation away from having the eastern city that's now known of Sydney CBD being the central hub, and looking towards push land out and activity out to Parramatta and beyond. So Parramatta becomes our central city, and upon there radiate out from the transport.
Thanks for tuning in to the first 5 minutes of the Property Investment Podcast. The Property Investment Podcast aims to bring together the best minds in the investment grade real estate sector. For the full episode and access to the live follow-up webinar, go to the MP Report Premium subscription at www.my-property-report.com.